Hi everybody, this is Phil Haloka from Complete Captive Management Services. Today we're going to talk about the auditor, the actuary, and the attorney, all vital service providers of a successful captive insurance company. So let's talk about the auditor's duty. The duty of the auditor is an independent evaluation of the presented financial statements as controlled and managed by the captive manager. Primary role of the auditor is to form an opinion, and that opinion is to give outside investors a level of certainty that what's being reported is actually there, and that's called support. The auditor provides one of three opinions, and those opinions are found in the independent auditor's review in the front of the financial audit. Those opinions are this. The gold standard is an unqualified opinion. The something's going on is a qualified opinion, and I don't even list it here, but an adverse opinion, that means run for the hills. You shouldn't even read further about what is said in that financial audit. So very simply put, the auditor's duty is to look back and to provide certainty that what is being reported is actually there. The users of the financial audit primarily are the owners of the captive, but most importantly, the investor. If you're investing in a group captive, you gotta look at the financial audit. You've gotta look at, is the captive on stable financial ground? So if you're joining a group captive, you gotta look at and review the latest financial audit. The regulators will want to see this, as well as creditors. Now, the frequency of an audit, it's generally once a year, but there's nothing to say that you can't do it more often. The challenge is there's a cost to having a financial audit, and the cost benefit analysis really kind of supports the need for a once a year audit. Therefore, that's what's generally accepted. The actuary, they have an ongoing duty to produce various documents: feasibility study, the statement of actuarial opinion, and an IBNR calculation. The feasibility study is really the actuary's prediction of the future financial success of the captive. And that's expressed in a 5 or 6 year pro forma look forward, meaning the actuary is going to predict revenues in, expenses out, and that should yield a profitable enterprise over the next 2 to 5 years. Okay? The statement of actuarial opinion is a regulatory financial reporting requirement, and the IBNR calculation is the incurred but not reported claims. So in other words, today, there has likely been claims that have been developing or have developed that hasn't been reported yet. So the actuary is responsible for placing a value on what claims are expected to be reported in the upcoming months or years. Simply put, the actuary is responsible for looking forward, making sure that the captive is financially solvent in the future years. The most important user of the feasibility study and the SAO are the regulator. The regulator is going to put a lot of weight on looking at the feasibility study and signing off only when they have some sort of assurance that an opinion from an actuarial professional has signed off on the captive is going to be successful in years to come. Ownership investors, yes, they're going to want to see this because they're going to want to see if my dollar is investing in this captive, is it going to yield some return? Okay. The feasibility study is generally done once a year. However, if there is a mid-year business plan change, the regulator will very likely say, you've got to update your feasibility study. Okay? So keep that in mind. The statement of actuarial opinion is also a regulatory requirement, and that's usually done once a year. And the IBNR calculation, incurred but not reported, is usually calculated on a quarterly basis. The attorney, your core documents, business plan, bylaws, your core documents, your insurance policies, your board meeting minutes, that's the expression of the purpose of the captive. Outside users are going to read those documents and they should come to a conclusion on what's the duty or the purpose of the captive. The attorney crafts and manages those documents. Okay? Now, the users of those documents, two groups. The ownership, number one. Investors are also going to want to look at the bylaws and the business plan. Okay? But also the regulators. These documents, the regulators look at very closely to make sure that the captive is going to comply with the statutes within that jurisdiction. Okay? Those statutes must comply, or the business plan, these core documents must comply with those statutes. The regulator is going to make sure that they do that. Okay? On an ongoing basis, the attorney is more than just a quarterly conversation. This is most likely a weekly, monthly, maybe quarterly conversation on the various attributes of the captive on an ongoing basis. When the captive has to adapt to the market, the attorney is going to help the captive adapt by changing the business plan or the various core documents. Okay? 3 very important service providers: objective, user, frequency. Hope this was helpful. We'll talk to you next week with other service providers. Have a good week. Bye now.